welcome to IrishRacing.com for another edition of Formscan, sponsored by William Hill. A massive weekend of racing ahead with the Tingle Creek at Sandown, the rescheduled Fighting Fifth, and of course the Hilly Way at Cork, the kind of highlights of the weekend for me anyway. And I'm delighted to be joined by Ronan Groome from the field. Ronan, how are you keeping? Looking forward to the racing ahead?
Very well, yeah. You painted it out there lovely. The 3 Grade 1s obviously tomorrow at Sandown, and then looking forward to seeing El Fabiolo on Sunday. So yeah, it should be a very informative weekend. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's. I think it's nice having the Fighting Fifth schedule as well as kind of an extra one in there, and kind of just a jam-packed weekend of action, I suppose. But look, I think to start off the show, we normally get a little bit of background to our guests. You're obviously working with the field now at the moment, but I suppose, like, what kind of got you into racing at the start, and kind of tell us a bit about your own story, I suppose.
I suppose I went racing with my granddad when I was younger. He was the one who brought me along in the car. We went to the likes of Kilbeggan and Navan and Curra and all that sort of stuff. He probably stopped for a few drinks on the way home because that was the done thing, I suppose. And he was one of these legends at the races where everyone knew him, and so I was kind of hooked on it by him. He'd be getting accosted by all the women outside on selling the apples and oranges and the 2 Toblerones for a fiver. That was my main first memories of it. So I kind of got hooked by him, and then I just kind of took it forward myself, I suppose, went racing and did equine business in Maynooth. And then I was very interested in journalism, so I ended up going over and did a sports master's journalism over in London, and ended up with the Racing Post. Not really in a journalistic thing, but I was on the production desk there. And then eventually, cut a long story short, ended up at the field. So I'm here 5 years now, believe it or not, so time flies.
Yeah, absolutely flies. You seem kind of very young to be there 5 years already, I'd say. But yeah, I suppose it's a good way to get into racing with that family tie, and kind of now with your own job at the moment, you kind of make great connections, I suppose, meeting people within racing all the time, going to trainers' yards, and you kind of get a real inside look at things as well, I suppose.
Oh, it's great, and that's always been there. Going to the yards, that's a great perk of the job. The press warnings, and even just going down to do interviews is great, to meet people face to face again. Obviously, wasn't happening during COVID, and I'm going racing a lot more now. Just we had a bit of a change up there last year, so getting to go do the reports, the track is always good. And when anytime you get to go racing for a living, you can't really complain, can you? So yeah, really, really good.
Yeah, no, we can't complain, and doing these podcasts is always great as well, talking about racing for half an hour. I think anyone would do it. So look, we'll drive away into racing anyway. There's plenty to talk about. I suppose we'll go through the graded action, and we can add in anything else we kind of fancy as we go along. So I think we'll probably kick off with Navan on Saturday. Grade 2 novice hurdle, probably the highlight of the card. A 5-runner, a stellar story, and better days ahead for Gordon. But Slade Steele for Henry looks a real strong one in the lineup as well. What kind of caught your eye looking at this one?
Yeah, I suppose Slade Steele was one everyone was interested in for the Royal Bond last season, but they kind of saw him as a stayer, didn't they? The way he won at Nace, he seemed to be a real kind of grinder. I was kind of interested in Stellar Story, I have to say. I like the way he did it at Navan. He was kind of pesky by Bull Walking there for a lot of the trip, but he kind of fended him off, and you see by the way he fell back into third that he was kind of he's knackered at the end of the race while he was really staying on strongly. Stellar Story, I thought he might just have the measure of Slade Steele here. A few of these, I suppose, Lecky Watson, his form first time out, it looked a bit dodgy at the time, but the horse that was third there, Shannon Royal, has gone on one by 20 odd lengths since, so maybe it probably wasn't as bad as it looked, so he's interesting as well. But maybe overstay longer trips down the line. I think Stellar Story for me, or with the course and distance form, Gordon would have had lots of options for this, I presume. So I would have thought he'd be close to favourite, if not shading it over Slade Steele. And I think he's a shade of odds. I think the bookmakers have gone with Slade Steele for now. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, Slade Steele is just a slight favourite there with William Hill. He's about 7-4. Like it's an interesting contest, definitely. Like you were saying, plenty of them kind of look to have bright futures ahead. Stellar Story, I agree with you. He was very good winning last time when Gordon was having that great day in Navan not too long ago. But I think Slade Steele, for me, I kind of preferred him personally. I just thought when he won his maiden hurdle in Nace, he looked like a right stayer that day, even though it was over 2 miles, and he still has that kind of turn of foot. I just think he might have that little bit of a class edge over the pair from Gordon's here. Lecky Watson, like you were saying, I think probably most people weren't like overly impressed by his debut in Thurles, but like you mentioned, like the form of it actually worked out quite well. So like it's a brilliant race. I just think Slade Steele probably has a feel kind of one who could be a Grade 1 horse. The others I'm not totally sure over hurdles anyway if they will be Grade 1 performers. So I'm probably edging with him, but like looking at the market there, like it's very tight. It's hard to be overly confident on any of them. But it'll be a great race, and obviously Gordon won it with Ginto last year, who was kind of shaped up to be one of the top novice hurdlers, wasn't he? Unfortunately, ill-fated in the end, but he's a very strong hand again. Look, that's the main race in Navan, I suppose. Like there's a few handicaps during the day. Is anything else kind of catch your eye in any of the other races?
Yeah, the 142 is a nice handicap, a 3 mile handicap hurdle that nice puzzle for punters to get stuck into, I suppose. And I just was a few of these that caught the eye. Angels Dawn down the bottom there for Sam Curling, the Kim Muir winner last season. Like she could be really well handicapped here off 118. If you look at the form book, she got beat 31 lengths at the last day, but I think that doesn't really tell the full story.
She travelled like a dream, didn't she, that day?
Yeah, and may have just cut out and badly hampered at the last as well, and allowed to come home in her own time. She's 20 pounds lower over hurdles, so a lot of people be interested in her. Canal End for Peter Fahey. I think this is an interesting 5-year-old coming up in trip. Won over 2.5 miles last season over hurdles after showing pieces of enough form early, and just giving a run over at Galway over 2 miles in heavy ground, maybe just to sharpen him up for this. He'd have to win here off a mark of 124 if they wanted to start thinking about, the handicaps, the bigger handicaps coming into the new year and that sort of stuff. So he was interesting as well. They were two I just thought I'd mention in that race, Emma.
Yeah, no prices yet here, but big field handicap there. You should get good odds in those. I actually like kind of like Beacon Edge in this one. I just thought I really loved his performance in Thurles last time. First start for Gordon after moving from Noel Meads. Got a good claimer on board as well, so I'd like to see him on a big race. But without prices, I think the two you mentioned was it Canal End about 12-1 on the tissue, and Angels Dawn about 20-1. So hopefully you can get some nice each way prices on those if you're looking into them.
I take those prices straight away if you offer them. Yeah. Now, to be honest, so we'll see what they come out with now. But we could be fastest finger first here now when the odds do come in.
Yeah, we'll be waiting for that this evening. But look, we'll drive on into Sandown anyway because massive day's racing there. Obviously, we'll kick it off, I suppose, with the Fighting Fifth. I was very surprised to even hear Shishkin was being considered to run here. Surely has absolutely no chance of getting anywhere near Constitution Hill. It should be a walk in the park, you'd imagine.
I think for Shishkin, it's a glorified racecourse gallop, and I've heard some people make a case for him. He is a Supreme Novice Hurdle winner, but I'm sure they're just using this as a possible prep. And I suppose the question while we're talking now, Emma, is whether Constitution Hill runs or not. I suppose it's been going on all week and it's still going on now. Nicky writing in his blog yesterday. So look, we hope he runs, but Nicky's starting to get a bit jittery about the heavy ground. And if he does come out, then if he comes out, like great to see him run for one, obviously, because he's just a great horse and he should win easily. But if he doesn't actually run, it's quite a good little betting heat. Then you have the two mares, Love Envoy and You Wear It Well. Love Envoy, I'm sure they have connections with her, Harry Fry. And Noel Feely would have been very pleased for it to come down to Sandown. She's got good record there, good record on soft, heavy kind of ground as well. So they'd be delighted if Constitution Hill came out as well, I'm sure. But she looks the prime contender there to follow him home or indeed take advantage. And obviously looking forward to seeing You Wear It Well as well. I thought she was a real strong stayer at the trip in the Mayor's Novice Hurdle last season and started off her season quite well. And she's obviously in there for the informed Jamie Snowden and the Gavin Sheehan team as well. So hope Constitution Hill runs just to see him. But yeah, as I know, I'm here in the office trying to write a preview, but I don't know if he's going to run or not. And it's a bit of a pain. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, he's been very jittery over the last few days, Nicky, I suppose, hasn't he? Just kind of to get your own opinions on the kind of champion hurdle scene, I suppose, in general, even outside of this race. Like we've seen Stateman and Imperi Pass make their reappearances over the past few weeks. What did you kind of make of, I suppose, Imperi Pass in particular? Like it's kind of been a mixed reaction. Some people think it was a good performance against a top staying hurdler. Other people were maybe a little bit disappointed. Maybe he isn't a superstar who can challenge Constitution Hill. What was your take on the comeback?
I was quite disappointed with him, to be honest. Like if you painted the race beforehand, Paul Town, there was no real pace in the race. It always seemed like Zanahiyr was going to go off in front, but not lead at a hectic pace. So everything worked out well for if you wanted to paint the race up for what Imperi Pass needed. And a connection, I'm sure, would have banked on him having the speed to just come away from a stayers hurdle horse essentially in Teahupoo, and he just didn't do it. Jack Kennedy gave um, Teahupoo a great ride, but nonetheless, whatever way you weigh this one up, I thought he was disappointed in Perry Pass. He would have thought he'd have the speed to get away from him quick enough and just go on and win by 4 or 5 lengths, but that wasn't the case at all. And look, Teahupoo ran a lovely race and he's a good horse fresh. I accept that completely, but you're looking, I think the main angle with Imperi Pass was this potential thing as opposed to State Man had been there and done it. But first time out, I was just expecting a bit more. What did you think?
Yeah, I was kind of the exact same, to be honest. Like, you're kind of waiting, like he's this novice coming through. And I know he's stepping into open company for the first time, but like you're hoping when Willie is keeping this fella champion hurdling, maybe there's kind of a chance that he's like some kind of a freak of nature, a bit like, not like Constitution Hill, I suppose they don't come around too often, but yeah, I mean it was a good performance, but I can't see him beating Stateman. So I mean I definitely can't see him beating Constitution Hill, which is I suppose a little bit disappointing. You're kind of hoping there might be some bit of a rival to him this year, but looking unlikely at the moment anyway. But look, I hope we get to see Constitution Hill tomorrow is kind of the first thing. But like you mentioned, it'll be a nice little betting heat without him if he doesn't show up. I really like you were well though for Jamie Snowden. She's just a really tough mare, isn't she? Coming up from the novice scene last year, she was very good on reappearance in Weatherby as well. Soft ground would be absolutely no problem to her. So like if Constitution Hill didn't turn up, I probably would fancy her to maybe take the spoils there. But I suppose waiting and seeing who's going to run in that one is the question. So look, we'll move on to the next race, the 150, the Henry VIII Novice Chase. Grade 1 contest over 2 miles. Probably not a vintage renewal of this race. We've seen some pretty good horses win it in the past. Hard to really see any of these being high up in the Arkle picture this year. But what's your kind of take on it?
Yeah, I guess what you're getting at there is that the Irish contingent in the Arkle this year are just a level above what this. But you never know. Like these are all unexposed. JPR1 was going to win quite smoothly at Cheltenham before that mishap at the last. I kind of like the horse that finished in behind him there, Petit Tonnerre, at a bit of a price here. He was getting, let's say, how would you phrase this, a considerable ride or a quiet kind of ride in behind there. And all of a sudden, JPR1 came down and Jockey got a bit more active, thinking we might be able to go ahead and win this one. But he still ran okay. If you look at his form last season, he was kind of decent level handicap hurdles and he ran his best race. 2 miles in the county hurdle, coming off a strong pace there. There is loads of pace on here. So I could see him sitting in behind and running well. Just the 6 runners, obviously, so probably not an each way option. But could see the race just setting up nicely for him. I did like both ICO and Colonel Harry for different reasons as well. I thought Colonel Harry was quite impressive first time out. I think he did it well. And ICO, willing to just write that run off the last day. I think he's a bit better than that. And back at Sandown, his best form is there. I think he's was it the novices championship final that he won last season and on soft ground. So I think he'll have conditions to suit. But I think at the prices, Petit Tonnerre was the one who interested me most, around 11-1.
Yeah, he was really catching that day, wasn't he? He was kind of sitting him quietly in behind, and like you said, kind of made a dash late on. But 11-1, probably not a bad price for him. But I just think JPR1 can make amends for that fall, to be honest. Okay, I don't think he'd have any kind of a say in an Arkle, like you were saying, like the likes of a Fissia Vega and a Marie National would be well ahead of him, you'd like to think. But it's probably not the strongest field in the world, and I think he was doing quite well that day when he came down. So I mean, it's kind of harsh to see him on seat as well, because he was fairly foot perfect the whole way around. So I'd fancy him a 7-4. I don't think he's bad odds at all about him either, considering how well he was looking to win that day. So I'd fancy him. But like you were saying, there's a few obvious dangers, like Paul Nicholls' ICO. Like when he targets these Saturday horses, especially the novice chasers, he doesn't get it too wrong normally. So few interesting ones in there. But look, we'll drive on into another big one, which is the Tingle Creek 3 o'clock. John Bond 1-3 favourite. Look, I think Edward Stone is kind of a talking point for me anyway. Like he's he's a horse. He's obviously been declared for Sunday as well, so there's no guarantee he's going to run here. He's declared for the Peterborough Chase as well, over 2.5 miles. But he's just a horse who ended up being really, really disappointing last year. It was a long way behind John Bon on seasonal reappearance as well. What's your kind of take on him? Do you think he can kind of get back to showing the spark that he maybe showed earlier in his career?
I think he can. Again, as you say, he's declared somewhere else, so we're half kind of talking about this race, hoping that he actually runs. But if he does run, I think he is. There's a lot to be said for him being a bit of a shorter price than he is now. I think he 9-2 there with William
With
Hill.
9-2 with Hills.
Yeah, I mean that could be a tiny bit big. Like he's obviously won the race last season, electric in the race last season. He comes into this one off the back of a run. Like there was a lot of talk about the Schlur Chase, how much he was fit and how much they were actually forceful enough with him late on. Did they kind of just concede the ghost there and kind of let him come home? John Bon, impressive as he was on the day, there was a talk about whether Edward Stone, how tuned up he was for that. So that would put that theory to the test here. But I'd be willing to take a chance on that theory, I suppose, at 9-2, given he's so good at Sandown. He handles soft, kind of heavy ground well. He's won on heavy ground before. And John Bon, and although he did win on soft ground that time at Cheltenham, I wonder, Nicky is the same as well, is nearly certain that he's better on good ground, and his class just getting him through the soft ground. So I think he's a tiny bit big here. Haddock says Oboe, just a quick mention for him. Like Gary Moore's pretty confident that he's a really good horse on soft ground. So if it did get really bottomless, I'd be half interested in him to run well. Maybe take out John Bon, do betting without that sort of thing. I think he could run okay from the front. Obviously, unfortunately, he fell the last day. But if you go back through his form, it's all on heavy ground, and he goes off in front, and might just get the run of things in front.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting little contest. I think Edward Stone, for me, I could be totally wrong on this, but I just think he can blow very hot and cold. I don't think he kind of shows his best every time he shows up at the racetrack. So I'd be nearly half willing to ride off that run against John Bon last time, but at the same time, I find it very hard to trust him as well. So yeah, John Bon 1-3 is it's extremely short. I think I suppose when you take out the runs against El Fabiolo, he's been fairly unbeatable, but. And obviously Constitution Hill as well in the Supreme, but he has looked maybe slightly vulnerable at times as well, which may be a silly thing to say, but I don't know how do you see his season panning out? Do you think he can turn around that form and with El Fabiolo? I know there's kind of questions. Was he at his best in the Arkle last year? Henderson doesn't seem to think so. Do you think that's just excuses, or can he turn it around?
I think there is a case to be made from Turner in the form. I do accept what Nicky said about the Arkle last year. The ground was just sticky there, and he didn't really get into the rhythm he can be. I do fully think that he's a better horse on quicker ground. So if it did come up quick or good to soft, even as it usually does at Cheltenham, it was obviously soft ground for the Arkle last year. I think he'd have a better chance of beating El Fabiolo. And those 2 mile race, those 2 mile races, as good as El Fabio looks, it's only one mistake away, and he does have a bit of I guess we'll get onto him when we talk to bring in Cork, I suppose, but he does have a little bit of a clanger in him, and that can make all the difference. You've seen down the years in champion chases, Desertio putting his legs in the water one year, and that's it, game over. You make one mistake and you're out. So I wouldn't, if you put it this way, if you're offering me one or the other at this point at the prices they are now, I'd probably go with John Bon.
Yeah, it's a really exciting division. It's not nice to have kind of two big contenders. It was a race that nearly went a bit boring for a while, I suppose, with an argument just kind of mopping them up. But to have these two kind of young superstars coming through and a few of the older lads still hanging around as well, it's probably one of my favourite championship races, to be honest. The championship race.
Down the years, if you're looking, I'm suppose you saw the clips on Racing TV, etc. this week. The reruns of this race is absolutely sensational. Moscow Flyer, Welsh Chief, Desertio up, and if we can get both of them there, John Bon and El Fabiolo, it's got to be one of the races at the festival. Yeah,
no, it's always a good one. But look, we'll move on to Aintree, the last race on Saturday that we'll talk about. It's the Beecher Chase. A couple of Irish representatives here, but it's not been a very fruitful affair for Irish horses. I don't think we've won the race since 2009 when Desi Hughes took it with Vic Venturi. Do you fancy any of them to overturn that stat, or is there an English horse maybe catching your eye?
Well, the Tri-Town winner, you got to make a case for him, Cocoa Beach. Over the national fences, I don't know, but Danny Gilligan's obviously going over to ride him again. He's in the form of his life. big old price there. A double figures, I suppose. What's it, 10-1 with William Hill? Like that. That's not the worst price at all. I mean, he's a real strong stayer, soft ground. If he got into a rhythm up front, he races prominently, which I guess would be helpful in a race like this over the national fences. Gets into a nice rhythm. I wouldn't put anyone off him. I guess the other Irish horse, the Stuart Crawford horse down the bottom, is just a bit unfortunate to be out of the weights. I know he has another one in there now, where when there's a bit of a squeak as well. But I guess the Cocoa Peach makes this race, Emma, in that he's driving a few of these out of the weights at the bottom. The likes of Percussion, who's got a good record over the national fences, he's 6 pounds wrong here, which really does shape the race. But I do have a real strong fancy for one here, and that's the Tizard horse, the Big Breakaway. I'm probably a bit of a cliff horse for me, to be honest with you, and cliff horses are never good. It's not a good to have a cliff horse, but he's like heavy ground, soft ground is absolutely perfect for him. He was second in the Welsh National last season. I'm a bit surprised that they haven't gone back there straight away, but they've opted to come here off a mark of 147, possibly with a view to the Grand National later down the line. He didn't get very far in the race last season, but he's always been a bit of a classy horse, finishing in behind the likes of Monkfish back in the day. He's still lightly raced for 8-year-old, and I thought his run in Wincanton was okay back. He was fifth there. The ground was quick. Wincanton, more of a speed track. Softer ground here, stays with Cocoa Beach in the race. He has a light-ish weight. He only has to carry 10 stone 13. I think he's reasonably good value there. Maybe one of my better bets of the weekend, I'd say.
Yeah, he's not a bad price there, 6-1. I was actually talking about this horse in a show earlier on before he ran in Wincanton. It kind of sounds a bit silly, like he's an 8-year-old, but you kind of just feel like he hasn't really shown everything he has yet. I'm not sure, is that why he's your cliff horse as well? But I'm kind of the same with him now.
You're waiting for that big win or something, yeah. And he's unexposed. Like, he only runs a few times a year or something, so you're always waiting for something to happen with him. Yeah.
I think there's a few people probably similar on that one. So yeah, he'll be one I'll be watching closely. But I'm actually, like you mentioned, Jock Cock he's about 8 pounds out of the weights, but I'm giving him a small chance, to be honest. Like, he's done most of his running in Hunter's Chases since he joined the Crawfords, but I thought he was very good when he won in Navan there a couple of weeks ago, back to exploiting a lower handicap mark. He's kind of I think if he jumps out and kind of gets ridden positively, takes the defences. He obviously ran in the Aintree Fox Hunters, didn't show up much there, but he has experience over the fences, I suppose, which might stand to him. Very low weight. I wouldn't be surprised to see him run kind of into the places anyway, around 20-1. Hopefully try and break that Irish duct in the race. But look, was there anything else you wanted to mention on Saturday that you fancied, or will we drive on into Cork on Sunday?
I give a quick mention to just a couple back at Sandown, Emma, if you don't mind. The 225 at Sandown is a nice little handicap hurdle. There's a horse called Imposed Trois. Nicky's Imposed Trois will be all the rage here. My uncle's horse was actually in his race the last day. He came Belgo Prince for Tony Martin. He came to the last and just made a mistake. And keep an eye on him in the future. He's run at Leopardstown over Christmas, but it was a real hot handicap hurdle that he won, and I think there'll be loads of winners coming out of it. But at the same time, this is competitive enough. There's a few 4-year-olds here, French-bred 4-year-olds here taking up the weights, but I like one called Arcube, there for Lucy Wadham. Like he's a nice little horse on the flat, and he's just won on good ground on the flat. In theory, he should, be allergic to this heavy ground, but his 2 wins have come on soft ground over hurdles, and he's did it really well over the course of this last time. Jumped a bit to his left, but he's got the great Sean Bowen on him here, and he's still relatively lightly raced 5-year-old. I thought he was a bit of value. I'd say you'd be getting decent places each way terms in this race, and thought he could run. He could run well. That's the 225 at Sandown. And then quickly, I'll go with Nasalam over at Chepstow, the 137. He's been a horse I followed a lot as well. That's in the Grand National Trial. He really caught the eye the last day at, he was in the Grand Sefton. They went no pace there. He was the only one who really came from the back. So I could see him running a lot better this time. I think he's around 6 or 7-1 behind as well for the Moors, who seem to be coming back into form as well.
Very nice. A few nice handicap selections there at decent prices. But look, we'll drive on into Cork on Sunday anyway, which is a massive day at my local track. Can't wait to go see El Fabiolo seasonal debut. And it's been a race really, like, in fairness, he always has massive support for the Hilly Way in Cork. Like, I think he's won like something like 9 of the last 11 renewals. Always kind of seems to send one of his top, or probably most of the time, he's top 2 mile chaser down there. So it's great for the track. But I think probably one of the most interesting things in this race, apart from El Fabio Rolo running, of course, is Jungle Buggy makes his reappearance after changing to Henry de Bromhead's yard. Obviously, a horse with a massive reputation. He has only won 3 times. He's won a bumper, a maiden hurdle, and a beginner's chase. Obviously, has to go right into the deep end here. Surely has no chance against the likes of El Fabiolo, but it'll be interesting to see how he kind of makes his comeback, I suppose, against this caliber of horses, I think.
Yeah, he is interesting project for Henry, and interesting as well that he starts off for 2 miles. Like, always perks your interest when Henry has one over 2 miles, Jason, and get him into rhythm, get him jumping. Could be anything, I guess. But yeah, I suppose that you're right. The race frames around El Fabiolo. It's hard to see anything putting it up to him here. Soft ground should be fine. I wonder, is there much pace in the race? Like, if you looked at all of his runs last season, like you would have said, Dashel Drasher set it all up for him. He went really fast, brought his stamina into play. I didn't really think there was a obvious front runner here. Maybe Phil Dore might make it. Mascada usually sits in behind. I wonder if they went relatively slow for a 2 mile race. Maybe Paul Townend will just bounce him out, and that'll be as simple as that. But if they sat him in behind and it maybe turned into a bit more of a quicker finish than usual, I wonder would Mascada be interesting there off the back of a run as well, coming back to 2 miles. Soft ground would suit her well. Maybe I'm clutching at straws a bit here, and El Fabio will just win. I probably won't play the race in any betting form, but that might be something to look out for.
Yeah, it could be. It's a fair point. Now, it could be interesting tactically. Like, there doesn't, like you said, nothing jumps out at you likely to make the running. But like you said, like, he's rated about £20 higher than anything else in the field. If he's anywhere near his best, he really just should be beating these. But yeah, interesting tactically, a good angle into it, I suppose. Who's going to make the running? I remember last year was maybe a little bit of an awkward race for an Argamine. There wasn't a whole pile in it to make the running either. He went off in front on his own, but got a little bit complacent, which is something maybe you might see with El Fabiolo again. Like, he's jumping. I suppose it's probably like the only question you have of him. And you mentioned that when you were talking about John Bon, like, in this 2 mile, like, chasing, especially when you're stepping into open company, there's really no room for error. Like, is that maybe a reason you could see him being taken on, like, maybe not in this race, but like as further down the line when he gets into hotter contests, would he's jumping maybe be the only question about him?
Absolutely, but in fairness, I was saying this going into the Arca last season, I was a John Bon fan, and I kept pointing out, well, this El Fabiolo's got a clanger in him, and I think he did make a mistake or two in the Arca and still had the class to oversee that. Maybe he's just that good, and it's I don't know, going forward, like soft ground as well is important. It can be important to him, and he stays really well at the trip. And maybe on the flip side, will he just can turn him around and iron out all those jumping issues, and he could be even better this year, So it could go either way. You can look at it both sides of the coin. In any case, I think he just wins here, doesn't he? It's hard to see him getting beaten, and I wonder what they'll do next with him, whether they go to Leopardstown at Christmas or that comes too soon, or maybe even Ascot for the Clarence House. We'll see, I guess.
Yeah, look, it'll be great to see him coming back anyway, but yeah, should be winning that fairly easily if he's anywhere near his best. But we'll give a mention to the Grade 3 Stairs Hurdle as well. I thought it was a very interesting race. Solitary Man and Wapat met here last time. Solitary Man getting the better that day, and Mahan's Way, Search for Glory, and Sarah Biera make up the rest of the field. Some interesting horses in here, I think. Anything you're particularly excited to see?
Yeah, so the Wapat and Solitary Man would be quite closely matched in that run. To my eye, I don't actually have the sectionals to the race, or weren't there on the day. It looked a bit of a sprint. I don't know if you were there. It looked like they kind of quickened up late on.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, that they'd be closely matched on that. So it wouldn't be a huge surprise if they went a bit quicker, or the race ended up in a different circumstance that Wapat could reverse that form. But in any case, I think Search for Glory could beat the two of them. like he's a second season novice for Gordon. He has some notable form last season. He was third to Good Land in that Good Maiden hurdle up at Leopardstown on over the Christmas period, and he was third to Monty Starr in the Grade 3 at Clonmel and ran reasonably well over Aintree as well. Got the job done on his first start this term over at Galway, and then ran quite well in behind Croke Park. I have him down as a 3 mile horse that he'll improve for the step up and trip, and I think just that form seems to me like it might just be stronger than what Solitary Man and what Pat produced, for all that they've got the course know-how and are proven over this sort of conditions. I just thought Search for Glory might end up favourite here and could win out today.
Yeah, no prices yet, obviously, which makes it a little bit harder to sum up. But I saw it like Solitary Man is a horse I really like. We were actually down in Endez on, was it Wednesday morning, doing a bit of a stable tour. And he was saying that he's maybe a horse who's a little bit ground dependent. So I'd imagine it'll be fairly soft in Cork on Sunday, which might be a little bit of a worry for him, I was saying. Yeah, but like you said, Search for Glory kind of feels like one who could maybe step up into the Grade 1 class, which maybe Solitary Man and Warpath might lack a bit over hurdles anyway, at least. I think Mahon's Way is quite an interesting one as well, though, for Henry. He was very good winning. He's made hurdle in Nace. Very expensive point-to-point horse. I think they talk quite a bit of him. He's beaten by Mirzor West, obviously, which is no shame in that either, I suppose, in a Nace bumper last year. Stepping up massively in trip here, though. I think it was over 2 mile 2 he won. He's maiden hurdle and up to 3 miles straight away. Obviously looks like a stayer for Henry. I don't really have a massively strong fancy in this, so to be honest, I'm a big Solitary Man fan, so I find it too hard to be backing against him, so I might leave this one off.
How did you get on in End the Bulgers? I say that was an interesting sort of place to go. Yeah,
it's very, it's a beautiful setup. It's kind of such a big kind of open space, but like there's there's fences everywhere, lovely gallops, but like everything is just kept so like meticulously, so well tidied. Like I'd say there's not like a leaf out of place on any of the ditches. And I think Enda's a great character. I think a very different way of training horses. I think like it's very, I suppose not, it's insulting to say it's very horse friendly to other trainers, but I think it's like a very fun place for horses and riders to be, I'd say. And it was great to see he was actually riding out Josie's orders when we were down there as well, which was nice to see an old favourite tipping around, still looking great as well. He mentioned the day. Do you remember the day he won 100 to 1 Fidelma Elvin Woodham in Cork?
Yes,
yeah. That was I think I was actually in Cork that day. I remember they were all delighted, but it's nice to see those kind of old favourites still tipping around the place. But yeah, it's he's a great character, I'd say, isn't he?
Yeah, I was meant to do, or I asked him to do a big interview, and he's quite a modest guy at one point. This could be 3 or 4 years ago. I think, if I can remember correctly, I think he was half suggesting I come down and ride out a few horses or something. And I was like, and that's not going to happen, or unless you want your horses to go lame. But it was just kind of like he wanted to show what he does down there, and sadly never got back to that situation. I'm sure we'll have another opportunity again. I was actually sad to miss it for whatever reason. I couldn't go this week. I had other things on, but I'd say it was a cool place to go.
Yeah, it's actually he seems like a very humble man. Like I was interviewing him, and he doesn't seem to want to big himself up too much, which is it's nice. But I think like for someone like him who's so legendary, I think it's nice to get the appreciation sometimes. But very, very humble man. And look, I think this horse could be a nice one for him in the future. I think probably stepping up over fences. He seemed kind of excited about him as well. So nice to see him with a few good horses in the yard. And yeah, I think, who else was he mentioning? There was a few kind of cross-country horses. Mika Malpeck was probably a horse to follow from that as well, I think. I think he's going to aim him at the Tim Duggan at the Christmas festival. So yeah, a few nice younger horses coming through, and a few older favourites as well for the cross-country races, as normal. But look, we'll drive on into the Mayor's Novice Chase Grade 2 race. This is one that always kind of seems to attract some of the better mares in training. Probably should give us good enough pointers towards the Mrs. Paddy Power Chase at the Cheltenham Festival if previous renewals or anything to go by. Obviously won by Impervious last year, who beat Dino Blue, who is high up in the betting for this year's renewal. Interesting, Zenta makes her chasing debut in a Grade 2 contest. Willie Mullins and Mark Walsh. she like on hurdles form, she should be hard to beat, I suppose. But I was very impressed by her Maker in Goran as well. What do you make of this one?
I was the same as you, Emma. I think I was sitting beside you even when we were down at Gordon's, and you were asking him about her, and then thought it was noteworthy that he's kind of saying she's less buzzy mare this year. She doesn't, she's more relaxed even, and she was doing that over 2 miles. And in time, she might be better over further. Back over 2 miles heavy ground, I think is fine for her right now. Like she was quite impressive here. I just watched the race again before I came on here. Like she was just allowed to go off in front, and she jumped well, bar the third last, which she took a right out chunk out of, but she didn't stop her winning by 11 lengths from Brandy Love and Ava Grace back in third, like two pretty decent Mullins mares. So I'd see her winning here. Like Zenta, of course, like you're looking at the Triumph Hurdle form last season, and we haven't really got to test that so far this term. So it'd be interesting to see how she gets on. But I'd say her allowances will be more acutely felt when she goes and races against geldings like Riviere de Tel did that year. She only actually gets £6 off her Maker and has to give away race fitness here. So I think there's a lot to like about her, and she looks like fences have kind of, like, she was quite good last season until she fell and she unseated, and her whole season just seemed to derail after that. But she won quite handsomely at Fairyhouse, I think, a couple of times, and I think she could be a dark one this year in the Mares division, as you said. Maybe up in the Mares Chase eventually at Cheltenham, 2.5 miles might be her bag, but I can see her winning here and making it 2 out of 2.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one, to be honest. Zenta, I'm not sure. Would you be worried at all about her jumping? I remember her debut last year was in Fairyhouse. She was fairly awkward at a few hurdles. Now I know, I'm not sure, were you at the Willie's media morning a couple of weeks ago? Like, he seemed to think that she was going to be a better chaser than a hurdler. But it's going to be hard for her here, I think, to make chasing debut against mares with experience. Like, Hermania Maker was absolutely brilliant in front. Like, she could put Zenta's jumping under a bit of pressure, I'd say. Would you be worried about it at all? I know she got better as the season went along, jumping wise, but
I would have thought so. Yeah, especially first time out over fence. I'm sure that they've schooled her, and that's what Willie's thinking about. And obviously she's a French bred, so she's probably going to be, to steal a flat term, she's probably going to be pretty precocious in that regard. But like, I would have thought Hauturier would be, obviously has a bit of chasing experience to her name. I would have thought she'd be, if you gave me a choice between her and Zenta, I think she's a reasonably good mare as well, and has a bit of a chasing experience, as I said. And just think Zenta it'll be a good performance if she goes and she does it here now. I think she'll need to be good.
She will indeed. She could be good though. Is the thing about her.
True enough.
Look, that's kind of the main action in Cork, I suppose. There's one I kind of fancy in the 245. Ricky Bobby, I just thought he was really, really eye-catching last time in Thurles. Came from absolutely nowhere, but still managed to get there a little bit too early. I think he was actually nabbed on the line by Herculaneum, who came from the back as well. He went off about £3 for that one, I think, but he had so much to do that day, and just getting there a little bit early probably cost him the race. I think David Doyle might ride him a little bit differently this time, so I'd be surprised if he wasn't bang there. I don't know what price he's going to be. Could be short enough for this one now, but I can see him running a massive race. Is there anything else in Cork that you kind of want to give a little mention to, or we move on to the last race? We'll talk about the Peterborough.
No, happy to move on. Emma, I haven't really got stuck into the maidens and stuff, but they all look interesting as it is, but I haven't got into them yet.
Lovely stuff. So the last race we'll talk about now, we'll wrap it up then, is the Peterborough Chase in Huntingdon. I always find it a little bit strange seeing a graded race on a Sunday in England. It doesn't really feel right to me. I nearly forgot he was even on, to be honest, until I heard Edward Stone had been declared for it. But he faces a fair rival here in Janadale, I'd say. He's stepping up to 2.5 miles for the first time, I think, in his chasing career. Is that a move that you think will suit him?
I don't know. When you get these 2 mile chasers that are so good and jumping so well over the distance, you always wonder. But there is the class angle there that just gets them through. I mean, I'd always looking for that as an angle into the Ryanair, the 2 mile chaser coming into that mid division, where it can often be a horse racing against horses that are either in between, and possibly not as good. But the class angle can often tell. So he's definitely warrants a go, I guess. And I wonder, are they just looking at El Fabiolo and John Bond thinking maybe that's not the avenue we want to take on this year. Let's try him over further. So it's a bit of a trial, I suppose, in that regard. And you have Janadil there who got a run behind him as well. 2.5 miles is probably his sort of trip. Jody McGarvey in the green and gold again for Willie Mullins, which is interesting enough. He's 4 Grade 1 winners, but 3 of them have come for JP McManus and Willie Mullins, and one of them is on this Janadil as well. So interesting to see how he gets on. It's not often Willie sends one over to Huntingdon. I'm sure if he's had a runner in this race before.
I think he actually had his first ever runner in Huntingdon earlier this year. Was there a Paul Byrne horse went over for a handicap or something?
All right.
I think I remember seeing that. But yeah, it wouldn't be his normal route, I suppose. But Jody and Willie is a great combination, like you said. Big day last weekend. Look, it's kind of, we're guessing, is he going to run here? But I'd probably fancy Janadil to, just with that. Look, it was a quiet run behind Allaho, I suppose. But like he's a good horse in his day. And Edward Stone, I wouldn't really trust him, like I kind of mentioned earlier. I think Janadil, look, I wouldn't say he's like super reliable or anything, but I think when he's there on his day and in this kind of a contest, I think he's probably good enough to deliver. But look, we'll wrap it up there. We're probably going on long enough now. But what would be your kind of nap for the weekend and thing your strongest fancy?
I go with the big breakaway, Emma. I think just at the prices, I think 8-1 is a fair price for him. And granted, he doesn't have the national fences know-how, but I think if he gets into a rhythm up front and with his low weight, courtesy of Cocoa Beach, I think he could run a big race. And 8-1 looks a fair price.
Very good. Nice little each way shout even there even. So I'm actually going to go with Slade Steele in the Grade 2 at Naas. I just think, look, the form of Navan, the form of his Naas win is looking even better after the Royal Bond last week. He beat King of Kingsfield very easily that day. A stayer, but he has pace as well. He might just have a little bit too much class for the Elliott pair is kind of my thinking behind that. So I think 7-4 with Hills probably isn't too bad a price about him. So that'll be my nap of the weekend. Hopefully we can have a good one. But look, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks so much, Ronan, for coming on. It was great to chat to you, and I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you're having a bet this weekend, make sure to gamble responsibly and like and subscribe to the channel as well.